Ambassador Kethera adjusted her breathing apparatus as she stepped off the transport shuttle onto the human space station. The metal corridors seemed primitive compared to the flowing bioarchitecture of her homeworld, but the humans had insisted on meeting here rather than on any of the core worlds. Strange considering they were supposedly a young species barely 300 cycles into space travel. The Galactic Council had discovered humanity only 50 rotations ago, when their crude chemical rockets finally managed to leave their home system. Most species required at least 1,000 cycles to develop faster than light travel, yet somehow these humans had stumbled upon it remarkably quickly. The Council had classified them as a Level 2 civilization, barely advanced enough for basic trade agreements. Kethera's translator implant buzzed as a human approached. He was tall by human standards, with graying hair and wearing what appeared to be a simple blue uniform. No ceremonial robes, no bio-enhancements, no neural crown indicating high rank. Just a regular human. "Ambassador Kethera, welcome to Station Unity," the human said, extending his hand in their peculiar greeting ritual. "I'm Captain Marcus Chen. Thank you for making the journey." She carefully clasped his hand, noting the surprising strength in his grip. For a species that evolved on a heavy gravity world, humans seemed almost fragile. Their bones looked thin, their skin soft, their teeth blunt. Yet something about this Captain Chen made her instincts whisper warnings. "The Council appreciates humanity's enthusiasm for joining our trade networks," she said diplomatically. "Though I must admit we're curious why you insisted on meeting here, rather than accepting our invitation to visit Centauri Prime." Captain Chen smiled, and Kethera noticed it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We thought it might be more comfortable for everyone if we met on neutral ground. Can I offer you some refreshment? We've prepared some synthetic alternatives that should be compatible with your biology." As they walked through the station, Kethera observed everything with the trained eye of a diplomat. The walls looked like basic metal alloy, the lighting was harsh and artificial, and the gravity felt uncomfortably heavy. Everything screamed of a primitive species trying their best to seem civilized, but small details nagged at her. The air recycling system was completely silent, more advanced than it should be for their tech level. The corridor joints showed no signs of stress despite the heavy gravity, and there were no visible security measures, which was either incredibly naive or incredibly confident. They entered what the humans called a conference room, a simple space with a long table and chairs. No holo displays, no neural interfaces, just primitive screens mounted on the walls. Captain Chen gestured for her to sit, and she noticed the chair adjusted perfectly to her anatomy without any visible controls. "Before we begin formal discussions," Chen said, settling into his own chair, "perhaps you could tell us more about these trade networks. We're still learning about galactic civilization." Kethera activated her datapad, projecting a three-dimensional map of local space. The Inner Spiral Trade Collective encompasses 47 star systems, with the Centauri serving as administrators. "We facilitate commerce between species based on their technological capabilities and resource needs." She highlighted various systems with different colors. Level 5 civilizations like the Centauri handle administration and high-technology goods. Level 4 species provide manufactured items and complex services. Level 3 civilizations offer raw materials and basic manufacturing. And Level 2 species like ourselves, Chen asked, typically provide agricultural products, simple crafts, or labor services, Kethera replied. "Your world shows promise for exotic food exports. We understand your species has developed quite diverse cuisine." Something flickered in Chen's expression. "That's generous of you. And what would humanity receive in return for these agricultural exports?" "Standard compensation includes basic medical technology, improved manufacturing techniques, and access to our communication networks. Many species find the transition period challenging, but within a few generations, most adapt well to their role in the galactic community." The words hung in the air for a moment. Chen leaned back in his chair, and Kethera could have sworn she heard the faint sound of machinery humming somewhere in the walls. "Ambassador," Chen said carefully, "what happens to species that don't adapt well to their assigned roles?" The question caught her off guard. Most primitive species were simply grateful for any contact with galactic civilization. Well, that's quite rare. The Council's assessments are very thorough. Species are classified according to their natural capabilities and technological potential. But hypothetically, Kethera felt uncomfortable. The Council has various intervention protocols, but as I said, it's very rare. Most species recognize the benefits of cooperation. Chen nodded slowly. Of course. And I assume the Council has already completed their assessment of humanity. Naturally. Your technological development, social structures, and military capabilities have all been evaluated. The classification process is quite comprehensive. Military capabilities? Chen's voice remained conversational, but something in his tone made Cathara's skin crawl. Standard procedure, she said quickly. The Council needs to understand each species' potential for disruption. But please don't take that the wrong way. Humanity's current military technology poses no concern to galactic stability. Chen stood up and walked to one of the wall screens. With a simple touch, it displayed what appeared to be a star map. Ambassador, would you mind if I showed you something? Just to help us understand our place in this galactic community better. Cathara nodded, though her instincts were now screaming warnings. The screen shifted, showing their current location and surrounding star systems. Standard navigation display for a Level 2 civilization. Then Chen touched another control and the display changed. The star map expanded, showing not just local space but vast reaches of the galaxy. Hundreds of systems lit up in soft blue, connected by flowing lines that pulsed with data. Jump gates, communication relays, supply lines, a network spanning thousands of light years. Cathara stared at the display in shock. This wasn't Level 2 technology. This was barely possible with Level 6 systems. Captain, she whispered, how do you have access to galactic navigation data? Chen turned back to her, and this time his smile was different. Predatory. Ambassador Cathara, he said softly, I think we need to have a very different conversation about humanity's place in your galactic community. The lights in the room dimmed slightly, and Cathara realized that the humming sound she'd been hearing wasn't machinery at all. It was the sound of weapon systems powering up. Cathara's breathing apparatus struggled to regulate her panic as the implications crashed over her. The navigation display showed real-time data from across the galaxy, information that should have been impossible for a Level 2 species to access. Her training kicked in, and she forced herself to remain calm. Captain Chen, she said carefully, I think there may be some misunderstanding. Perhaps your systems are malfunctioning. Chen chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. No malfunction, Ambassador, though I appreciate your attempt to maintain diplomatic protocol. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. Let me tell you a story about humanity. Against her better judgment, Cathara sat. The chair adjusted again, and she noticed the room's environmental controls had automatically optimized for her comfort. Technology that sophisticated should have taken centuries to develop. 50 years ago, Chen began, when your council first discovered us, we made a choice. We could reveal ourselves as we truly were, or we could play the role you expected. He paused, watching her reaction. We chose to play the role. What do you mean? Chen touched the wall screen again. The display shifted to show Earth, but not the primitive industrial world described in council records. Instead, massive orbital structures surrounded the planet like metallic rings. Space elevators reached from the surface to stations that dwarfed anything in galactic council space. This is Earth as it actually exists, Chen said. Population, 47 billion, spread across 12 worlds and 300 orbital habitats. We've been a spacefaring civilization for over 800 years. Cathara's mind reeled. That's impossible. Our surveys showed primitive chemical rockets, basic computer systems, fractured nation-states. Our surveys showed you what we wanted you to see. Chen's expression grew serious. When we detected your scout ships approaching our system, we had a choice to make. We knew nothing about galactic civilization, its politics, its power structures, so we decided to observe before acting. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be human ships. But these weren't the crude metal boxes described in council reports. They were sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls, with weapon systems that made Cathara's stomach clench in recognition. We built fake cities, Chen continued. Primitive ones, full of the chemical pollution and inefficiency you expected. We hid our real ships behind planetary shields and sent up crude rockets for you to observe. We even staged wars between fictional nation-states to make ourselves appear fractured and weak. But why? Cathara whispered. Because we're not naive, Ambassador. We've seen this pattern before in our own history. When a technologically superior civilization encounters a primitive one, It rarely ends well for the primitives. Chen's voice hardened. We wanted to understand the Galactic Council before revealing our true capabilities. The wall screen shifted to show surveillance footage. Centauri ships approaching human space. Council meetings discussing humanity's potential. Classified reports about species that had been integrated into the galactic community. Cathara recognized some of the footage from highly secure council archives. How did you access these files? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. We've been inside your network since the first week of contact, Chen said simply. Your security systems are adequate for level 4 civilizations, but we've been dealing with information warfare for centuries. The implications hit her like a physical blow. If humans could penetrate council security so easily, what else might they have done? What other secrets might they have uncovered? We learned about the trade networks, Chen continued, and about what really happens to species classified as level 2 or 3. We read the reports from worlds that tried to resist their assigned roles. We saw the intervention protocols in action. Cathara felt sick. The Council's integration methods weren't supposed to be public knowledge. They were necessary for galactic stability, but most species never learned the full details. The Harani tried to maintain their independence, Chen said, bringing up another file. A proud warrior culture that refused to accept their role as a raw material supplier. The Council decided they needed adjustment. The display showed before and after images of Harani space. In the first, dozens of inhabited worlds buzzed with activity. In the second, only 3 worlds remained populated, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment. The survivors were relocated to agricultural worlds, Chen continued. Their children were raised in council education centers, taught that their ancestors had been dangerous primitives who needed guidance. Within 2 generations, the Harani were model citizens of the galactic community. That was different, Cathara protested weakly. The Harani were aggressive, militaristic. They posed a threat to civilian populations. According to council records, yes. But we also found the real reports, the ones showing that the Harani had never attacked anyone. Their crime was refusing to accept their assigned role and demanding equal representation in council decisions. Chen stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the stars. We found 17 similar cases over the past 500 years, species that were too independent, too proud or too advanced for their assigned classifications. All of them faced intervention protocols. The Council maintains galactic peace, Cathara said, but the words felt hollow. Without proper administration, without order, there would be chaos. Whose order? Chen asked, turning back to her. Centauri order? Because that's what we discovered, Ambassador. The Galactic Council isn't really a council at all. It's a Centauri empire with extra steps. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Cathara wanted to deny it, but decades of diplomatic training had taught her to recognize uncomfortable truths. The Centauri advanced first, she said carefully. They naturally took leadership roles. They advanced first because they systematically suppressed every other species that might challenge them, Chen interrupted. We found the historical records, the ones buried in the deepest archives. The Centauri weren't the first to develop faster-than-light travel. They were just the first to survive long enough to build an empire. Chen returned to his chair, his expression softening slightly. We don't blame you personally, Ambassador. Most council species genuinely believe in the system, but from our perspective, you're all living in a carefully maintained illusion. What do you want? Cathara asked finally. We want what every species wants, Chen replied, the right to determine our own destiny. But we also understand that openly challenging the council would result in intervention protocols, so we've been preparing. The wall screen changed one final time, showing a tactical display that made Cathara's blood freeze. Human ships were positioned throughout Galactic Council space. Not the primitive vessels in official records, but advanced warships that had somehow avoided detection for decades. Preparing for what? She whispered. Chen's smile returned, cold and predatory. For the day when humanity stops pretending to be primitive. For the day when we remind the galaxy what happens when a truly advanced species decides to stop playing by someone else's rules. 3 days later, Cathara sat in the emergency session of the Galactic Council High Command. Her report spread across the holographic displays surrounding the chamber. The assembled representatives from a dozen species stared at the data with expressions ranging from disbelief to terror. Chancellor Vexiani, The Zentari representative examined the surveillance images with 4 of his 6 eyes while the others focused on tactical projections. His scaled hide had taken on the deep purple coloration that indicated extreme stress. "You're certain these readings are accurate?" he asked, his translated voice carrying undertones of barely controlled panic. "I verified them personally," Cathara replied. "The human ships appeared on our sensors only when they chose to reveal themselves. Their stealth technology is unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Thrace of the Corvin Defense Fleet leaned forward, her crystalline features refracting the display light into rainbow patterns. "The energy signatures are off the charts. These aren't level 2 vessels. They're not even level 6. I've never seen power readings like this." Council Military Advisor Grentok's mandibles clicked nervously as he highlighted specific sections of the report. "If this data is accurate, the humans have been operating undetected in our space for decades. They could have been gathering intelligence on every world, every facility, every weakness we have." "They have," Cathara confirmed grimly. "Captain Chen showed me classified files from our own archives. Files that should have been impossible to access remotely." Chancellor Vexani's remaining eyes focused on her. "What exactly did they say about their intentions?" Cathara replayed Chen's words in her mind, choosing her phrasing carefully. "They expressed dissatisfaction with the current galactic order. They seem to believe the Council has been suppressing other species' development." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the holographic displays. Admiral Thrace was the first to speak. "They're not wrong, are they?" Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Chancellor Vexani's hide flushed darker purple. "Admiral, that's hardly relevant to our current situation," he said stiffly. "Isn't it?" Thrace stood, her crystalline form towering over the seated representatives. "If the humans have access to our classified archives, they know about the intervention protocols. They know about the Hirani. They know about all of them." Advisor Grentok's mandibles clicked faster. "The intervention protocols are classified for good reason. Galactic stability requires that 37 species remain in permanent servitude to the Zentari Empire," Thrace interrupted. "Don't pretend this is about peacekeeping." Chancellor Vexani rose from his seat, his 6 eyes blazing with anger. "The Zentari have sacrificed much to maintain order in this galaxy. Without proper administration, without hierarchy, there would be constant warfare. Like the warfare we've seen in the Outer Rim." Thrace shot back. "Oh wait. There hasn't been any warfare in the Outer Rim because those species are too busy being used as slave labor to fight anyone." Cathara watched the argument escalate with growing dread. The humans had done more than reveal their own capabilities. They had forced the Council to confront truths that had been buried for centuries. "Enough," said a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Every representative immediately fell silent as High Chancellor Mordak entered, his ancient Zentari form supported by advanced mobility apparatus. At over 1,000 years old, he was one of the few beings alive who remembered the early days of the Council. "High Chancellor," Vexani said, bowing deeply. "We were just reviewing the situation with—" "I heard," Mordak interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He moved slowly to the center of the chamber, his pale eyes studying each representative. "The humans know. They know some things," Vexani said carefully. "But we can contain this. Implement intervention protocols, restructure their civilization before they—" "With what?" Mordak asked quietly. "Did you not read the tactical assessment? Their technology surpasses ours by centuries. Their ships outnumber our entire fleet. And they've been watching us for 50 years. Admiral Thrace pulled up the tactical displays again. "The positioning is strategic perfection. They have forces near every major Council world, every key installation. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it years ago. Then why haven't they?" Advisor Grentok demanded. High Chancellor Mordak moved to the central display, his ancient hands manipulating the controls with practiced ease. The image changed to show historical records. The early days of Zentari expansion, the first contact protocols, the gradual establishment of the Council system. "Because they're not conquerors," he said quietly. "They're liberators." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Chancellor Vexani's hide had gone completely white with shock. "High Chancellor, surely you don't believe—" "I believe what the evidence shows," Mordak replied. "The humans could have eliminated us at any point over the past 50 years. Instead, they watched. They learned. They prepared." He turned to face the assembled representatives. They're not planning to destroy galactic civilization. They're planning to free it. Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. What do you think they'll do? Mordak manipulated the displays again, showing trade routes, communication networks, supply lines, the infrastructure that held the galactic community together. They'll demonstrate, he said simply. They'll show the galaxy what they're capable of, and then they'll offer an alternative to our system. They'll give every suppressed species a choice. We could negotiate, Vexani suggested desperately. Offer them better terms, recognition as a level 5 civilization, and admit that our entire classification system is a lie. Admiral Thrace laughed bitterly. The moment we acknowledge that humans deserve equal status, every other species will demand the same. Which brings us to the real question, Mordak said, his ancient voice heavy with resignation. Do we fight a war we cannot win to preserve a system built on lies? Or do we try to find a place in whatever comes next? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some representatives demanded immediate military action, others called for negotiation, still others suggested retreat to fortified core worlds. But beneath all the shouting, Cathara heard something else, the sound of an empire beginning to crumble. Her personal communication device chimed softly. A message from Captain Chen, transmitted on frequencies that should have been impossible for humans to access. Ambassador, the message read, we hope you've had time to share our conversation with your colleagues. We'd like to invite the full council to another meeting. This time, we'll be bringing some friends. Attached to the message was a star chart showing human fleet positions throughout council space. The numbers were staggering, thousands of ships, all previously undetected, all now broadcasting their positions openly. Cathara looked up from her device to find every other representative staring at their own screens. They had all received the same message. It seems, High Chancellor Mordak said quietly, that humanity has decided to stop pretending. Through the chamber's viewports, Cathara could see ships approaching the station. Sleek, impossible vessels that moved through space like predators approaching their prey. The age of human deception was over. The age of human revelation was about to begin. The human fleet arrived at Council Central Station in perfect formation, their ships moving with a precision that made even Admiral Thrace's experienced eye widen in amazement. Where Council vessels looked like functional chunks of metal and ceramic, the human ships seemed to flow through space like living things, their hulls shifting and adapting to optimize their movement. Cathara stood in the station's main observation deck alongside the other Council representatives, watching as humanity finally revealed itself to the galaxy. The primitive chemical rockets from official records were nowhere to be seen. Instead, vessels the size of small moons hung in space around them, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with contained energy. Sensors can't penetrate their hulls, Admiral Thrace reported, her voice tight with professional admiration and growing terror. Whatever they're using for armor, it's absorbing or deflecting every scanning attempt. High Chancellor Mordak observed the display with the calm of someone who had already accepted defeat. How many ships? We've counted over 3,000 so far, Thrace replied. And they're still arriving. Chancellor Vexani paced behind them, his 6 eyes darting between the displays and the approaching fleet. This is madness. No species could build so many advanced vessels without someone noticing. Unless they've been building them for centuries, Cathara said quietly. Captain Chen mentioned they've been spacefaring for 800 years. What could a species accomplish in that time if they weren't held back by intervention protocols? Her question was answered as the largest human vessel moved closer to the station. It dwarfed everything around it, easily the size of a small planet. But as it approached, sections of its hull began to shift and reconfigure, revealing that it wasn't just a ship. It was a mobile space habitat, complete with forests visible through transparent sections and what appeared to be cities built into its superstructure. By the void, Admiral Thrace whispered, that's not a warship. It's a world. The communication systems crackled to life and Captain Chen's voice filled the observation deck. Council representatives, thank you for accepting our invitation. We know this is a lot to process, so we thought a demonstration might help clarify our position. One of the smaller human ships moved away from the fleet, positioning itself near a large asteroid that drifted at the edge of the system. Without any visible weapons fire or energy discharge, the asteroid simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a chunk of rock several kilometers across, and the next moment there was empty space. Our technology allows us to manipulate matter at the subatomic level. Chen's voice continued conversationally. We can unmake things as easily as we can make them. But we're not here to threaten anyone. We're here to offer a choice. The massive world ship moved closer to the station, and Cathara could see that it was beautiful beyond description. Waterfalls cascaded from one level to another. Forests spread across vast terraces, and cities sparkled like jewels embedded in living crystal. It was a vision of what spacefaring civilization could become when freed from the limitations of scarcity and conflict. For 50 years, Chen continued, we've watched the Council maintain order through fear and suppression. We've seen brilliant species relegated to menial roles because they posed a potential threat to Zentari dominance. We've watched the galaxy stagnate while its potential was deliberately constrained. Chancellor Vexani activated his communicator with shaking hands. Captain Chen, the Council is prepared to negotiate. We can discuss revised classifications, improved trade agreements. Chancellor, with respect, we're not here to negotiate improvements to a fundamentally broken system, Chen interrupted. We're here to offer something better. The displays throughout the station suddenly activated, showing images from across the galaxy. Worlds that had been classified as agricultural suppliers revealed hidden cities and advanced technology. Species that had been labeled as primitive showed complex space-based civilizations that had been concealed for decades. We're not the only ones who've been pretending, Chen said. When we began revealing ourselves to other suppressed species, we discovered an entire shadow network of civilizations that have been hiding their true capabilities. The Harani survivors? They've been rebuilding in secret for 2 centuries. The Villani mining colonies? They've developed technology that makes Council engineering look primitive. Cathara watched in stunned silence as the true scope of the deception became clear. Dozens of species had been maintaining false fronts, playing their assigned roles while secretly advancing far beyond their supposed limitations. This is impossible, Vexani protested. Our monitoring systems, our surveys, your monitoring systems see what we want them to see, Chen replied. For centuries, suppressed species have been sharing information and technology while maintaining the appearance of compliance. We've been building a true galactic civilization in the shadows of your empire. High Chancellor Mordak stepped forward, his ancient voice carrying clearly through the communication system. What is it you want from us? We want you to make a choice, Chen answered. You can continue trying to maintain control through force, knowing that you're now facing the combined might of 47 advanced civilizations. Or you can join us in building something better. Admiral Thrace pulled up tactical displays showing the full scope of the hidden alliance. Every supposedly primitive world was now revealing defensive installations and fleets that had been concealed for generations. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely. You're talking about the end of galactic government, she said. We're talking about the beginning of galactic cooperation, Chen corrected. The Council model assumes that civilization requires hierarchy and control. We've proven that's false. Our alliance has been maintaining peace and promoting advancement for decades, without any central authority. The world ship had moved close, enough that Cathara could see individual beings moving through its transparent sections. Humans, yes, but also representatives from dozens of other species, all working together in apparent harmony. How do we know you won't simply replace Zentari dominance with human dominance? Chancellor Vexani demanded. Because we don't want to rule anything, Chen replied simply. We want to explore, to learn, to grow. We want every species to reach its full potential without artificial constraints. We want a galaxy where advancement is shared rather than hoarded. Through the observation deck's viewports, Cathara could see more ships arriving, vessels from species she had thought were primitive, technology she had never imagined possible. The galaxy she had known was revealing itself to be an illusion. What happens to the Council? She asked. That's up to you, Chen said. Species that want to maintain the old hierarchies are welcome to do so in their own space. But they won't be able to enforce those hierarchies on others. The age of involuntary classification is over. High Chancellor Mordak moved to the communication panel, his ancient form seeming even more frail in the face of this cosmic shift. Captain Chen, he said quietly, I am old enough to remember when the Council was formed. I remember the wars that preceded it, the chaos that central authority was meant to prevent. What assurance do we have that your alliance won't devolve into the same conflicts? Because we've already proven it works, Chen replied. For 50 years, our Shadow Alliance has maintained peace without enforcement, shared technology without exploitation, and resolved conflicts without intervention protocols. We've built the civilization you claim to be protecting, while you were busy protecting your power. The massive fleet hung in space around the station, no longer hiding their capabilities. Hundreds of species, thousands of ships, technologies beyond imagination, all of it concealed for generations while the Council believed it ruled the galaxy. The demonstration is over, Chen announced. Now comes the choice. Join us in building a true galactic civilization, or retreat to your core worlds and maintain your empire over those who still believe in it. But the era of controlling the galaxy through deception and fear ends today. As if summoned by his words, ships began appearing throughout Council space, broadcasting the same message to every world simultaneously. The masquerade was over. Humanity and its allies were no longer pretending to be primitive. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the revelation, as historians were already calling it, Kethera walked through the transformed corridors of what had once been Council Central Station. The sterile metal walls had been replaced with living bioarchitecture that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, while gravity generators allowed beings from dozens of different worlds to move comfortably through the same spaces. The station itself had become a symbol of the new galactic order, no longer a seat of centralized power, but a hub of cooperation and exchange. Representatives from over 60 species worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. She paused at an observation window to watch the construction of humanity's latest gift to the galaxy, a massive educational facility where young beings from every species could learn together. Human engineering crews worked alongside Harani architects, Falani energy specialists, and dozens of other previously suppressed civilizations, their combined expertise creating something that surpassed anything the Council had ever built. Quite a change from our first meeting, Captain Chen said, approaching from behind. He looked older now, the stress of managing first contact with dozens of species having taken its toll, but his eyes held a satisfaction that hadn't been there before. I never imagined anything like this was possible, Kethera admitted. When you first revealed the truth, I thought it would mean chaos and war. It almost did, Chen acknowledged. The first few weeks were touch and go. Some Council species tried to maintain their old hierarchies by force. Kethera remembered those dark days. Chancellor Vexani had attempted to rally the Zentari military for a final stand, convinced that galactic civilization would collapse without proper authority. The resulting conflict had been brief but devastating, ending only when human allies demonstrated their ability to disable Zentari ships without destroying them. The Zentari hardliners still refused to participate, she said. That's their choice, Chen replied. We're not interested in forcing anyone to join our alliance, but we also won't allow them to force others to remain under their control. Through the observation window, they could see Zentari Prime in the distance, now surrounded by a defensive barrier that prevented any ships from entering or leaving. The remaining hardliners had essentially imprisoned themselves rather than adapt to the new reality. It's sad, Kethera said. High Chancellor Mordak was willing to work with you. If more of them had listened to him. Mordak was remarkable, Chen agreed. It takes courage to admit that everything you've believed is wrong. Not everyone has that strength. The elderly Zentari leader had become an unexpected ally, helping to ease the transition for species that were struggling to adapt to sudden freedom. His death 3 months ago had been mourned throughout the galaxy, even by many who had once feared him. Have you seen the reports from the Outer Rim? Chen asked, pulling up a holographic display. Kethera studied the data with amazement. Systems that had been strip-mined for resources under Council rule were flourishing again. The Harani had not only rebuilt their civilization, but had developed terraforming technology that was transforming dead worlds into garden paradises. The Velani had shared their mining innovations freely, allowing dangerous extraction work to be done by automated systems that protected both workers and environments. Production is up 300% across all sectors, she noted. How is that possible? When you don't have to hide your capabilities or limit your development to maintain artificial hierarchies, amazing things become possible, Chen explained. Every species has unique gifts. When they're free to share them instead of hoarding them, everyone benefits. They moved through the station's central plaza, where beings from across the galaxy mingled freely. A group of young Corvin crystalline entities played music with human children, their combined voices creating harmonies that neither species could achieve alone. Elderly Harani warriors shared stories with Zentari philosophers who had rejected their species' supremacist ideology. "What about Earth?" Kethara asked. "With all this galactic cooperation, have humans changed?" Chen smiled, the expression genuine this time. "We've grown. Having to pretend to be primitive for 50 years taught us patience and humility. Working with dozens of other advanced species has shown us possibilities we never imagined on our own." He gestured to a section of the plaza where human engineers were collaborating with Vellani energy specialists on some kind of experimental device. "That project there? It's an attempt to create stable artificial gravity without the massive energy requirements our current systems need. The Vellani have insights into quantum mechanics that complement our understanding of space-time manipulation. Either species could develop this technology alone." "And the defensive preparations?" Kethara asked carefully. Chen's expression grew more serious. "Still necessary, unfortunately. The hardline Zentari aren't the only threat. We've detected signs of other galactic powers beyond Council space, entities that might see our alliance as either a threat or an opportunity." The implications of that statement sent a chill through Kethara. The galaxy was vast, and the Council had only ever controlled a small portion of it. If there were other civilizations out there with the power to challenge even the human alliance? But that's a problem for tomorrow, Chen continued. Today we celebrate what we've accomplished. As if summoned by his words, the station's communication system activated with a familiar voice, Admiral Thrace, now serving as coordinator for the Alliance's exploration fleet. "Attention all station personnel," she announced. "We've just received confirmation from the Andromeda expedition. First contact has been successfully established with 3 new species, all of whom have expressed interest in joining our alliance." Cheers erupted throughout the plaza as beings from dozens of species celebrated together. The alliance was growing, spreading its message of cooperation and freedom beyond even the boundaries of their own galaxy. Kethara watched the celebration with wonder. 6 months ago, she had been a representative of what she thought was the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Now she was part of something that made the old council look like children playing with primitive toys. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked Chen. "Revealing yourselves, destroying the old order?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching human children play with young beings from a dozen other species, their laughter echoing through the bioluminescent corridors. "Ask me that question in 100 years, he said finally. "When these children are adults, when they've grown up in a galaxy where cooperation is normal and suppression is unthinkable, when they've pushed the boundaries of what's possible even further than we have." He turned to her with that predatory smile she remembered from their first meeting, but now she understood it wasn't the expression of a conqueror. It was the expression of someone who had seen the future and knew it was going to be magnificent. "Humanity spent 50 years pretending to be primitive," Chen said. "But our real gift isn't advanced technology or military might. It's the ability to see potential where others see only limitations. And right now I see unlimited potential." Around them, the galaxy continued its transformation. Species after species discovering what they could accomplish when they were free to reach for the stars, without artificial constraints holding them back. The age of pretending was over. The age of possibility had begun. 10 years after the revelation, the galaxy barely resembled the one that had existed under Council rule. Kethara stood in the command center of New Harmony, a massive space structure that served as the mobile capital of the Galactic Alliance. Unlike the fixed installations of the old order, New Harmony could travel between star systems, bringing the benefits of Alliance membership directly to worlds still making the transition to freedom. The structure itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human space-folding technology combined with Harani defensive systems, Vellani energy networks, and architectural principles from 40 other species. It wasn't just a space station. It was a small world that could appear anywhere in the galaxy where help was needed. "Status report from the outer territories," Admiral Thrace announced, her crystalline form now enhanced with biomechanical interfaces that allowed her to process data from thousands of sources simultaneously. "The Krellin hegemony has agreed to cease hostilities in exchange for Alliance protection." Keth-Ara studied the tactical displays with interest. The Krellin were one of the few remaining aggressive powers in the galaxy, a species that had maintained their territorial expansion through military conquest. But even they had finally recognized that the Alliance's defensive capabilities made further aggression pointless. "What about their conquered populations?" she asked. "All liberated and given the choice of independence or Alliance membership," Thrace replied. "Interestingly, most chose to form new cooperative governments rather than return to their old isolated systems." Captain Chen, now bearing the title of Alliance Coordinator, reviewed the integration reports. "It's becoming a pattern. Once species experience true cooperation, they rarely want to go back to the old ways." The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now working together on projects that benefited entire star systems. The Vorthon and the Kelari, who had fought a genocidal war for 3 centuries, were now jointly developing technology to repair the environmental damage their conflict had caused. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim, one of the younger human officers, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Network." Chen activated the main display, and Keth-Ara felt her blood chill at what she saw. The transmission showed massive structures moving through the void between galaxies, ships if they could be called that, which dwarfed even the largest Alliance vessels. "The architects," Chen said quietly. "They're finally making their move." Keth-Ara had heard whispers about the architects over the past few years, an ancient species that supposedly predated most galactic civilizations. Intelligence suggested they were responsible for creating some of the older structures found throughout the galaxy, but they had withdrawn to deep space eons ago. Now it seemed they were returning. "Energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases," reported Dr. Vextal, one of the few Zentari who had joined the Alliance after rejecting their species' isolationist stance. "If these readings are accurate, their technology makes even our most advanced systems look primitive." "How long until they reach our space?" Chen asked. "At their current velocity, approximately 6 months, Thrace calculated. "But sir, they're not heading for Alliance territory. They're moving toward the Zentari isolation zone." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The Zentari hardliners, still trapped behind their defensive barriers, would be completely helpless against technology of this magnitude. "We have to warn them," Keth-Ara said instinctively. "They won't listen," Dr. Vextal pointed out sadly. "The Council remnants still refuse all communication with Alliance forces. They'd rather die than accept our help." Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the data streams. "Actually, they might not have a choice. Lieutenant Kim, open a channel to the Architect fleet." "Sir?" Kim looked uncertain. "Are you sure that's wise?" "If they're as advanced as our readings suggest, they already know we're here," Chen replied. "Better to make contact on our terms." The communication system crackled as it attempted to reach across the vast distances of space. For several minutes there was only static. Then suddenly the displays filled with something that made everyone in the command center gasp. The being that appeared was humanoid in general shape, but seemed to be made of living light, its form shifting and flowing like liquid starfire. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in their minds rather than as sound. "Young species," the entity said, its mental voice carrying notes of amusement and approval. "You have progressed far since we last observed your galaxy." "You're the architects," Chen said, not bothering to phrase it as a question. "We are what you call the architects, yes. We shaped this galaxy when it was young, guided the early development of life and civilization. Then we withdrew to allow natural evolution to take its course." Keth-Ara found her voice. "Why are you returning now?" The entity's form pulsed with what might have been laughter. "Because something remarkable has happened. For the first time in this galaxy's history, multiple species have learned to truly cooperate rather than simply coexist. Your alliance represents an evolutionary leap we had hoped to see but never expected to witness." "And the Zentari isolation zone?" Admiral Thrace asked. "A failed experiment," the architect replied sadly. "The Zentari represent an evolutionary dead end. a species that chose stagnation over growth, control over cooperation. We had hoped they might learn from your example, but they have instead chosen to wall themselves off from progress. Chen leaned forward. What do you intend to do? We will offer them the same choice we offer all species that reach a certain level of development: evolve or be removed to prevent contamination of the galactic ecosystem. The casual way the entity discussed the potential elimination of an entire species sent chills through the command center, but before anyone could protest, the architect continued. However, your alliance has earned consideration. If you can demonstrate that even the most stubborn species can learn cooperation, we will allow the Zentari to continue their existence under your guidance. You want us to convince them to join the alliance? Cathara asked. We want you to prove that cooperation can triumph over the urge to dominate, the architect replied. If you can integrate the Zentari into your alliance without conquest, without forcing them to abandon their core identity, then you will have shown that your model truly is superior to the old ways. The display showing the architect fleet updated, revealing that the massive vessels had stopped their approach and were now holding position at the edge of the galaxy. You have 6 months, the entity announced. If you succeed, we will share knowledge that will accelerate your development by millennia. If you fail, we will remove the Zentari from the galactic equation and monitor your alliance for signs of similar stagnation. The communication ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Well, Chen said finally, it looks like humanity gets to pretend one more time. Pretend? Cathara asked. Chen's familiar predatory smile returned. We're going to pretend that breaking down the barriers around Zentari space and convincing a species of supremacists to join a cooperative alliance is actually possible. He turned to address the entire command center. All departments begin planning for operation integration. We have 6 months to accomplish the impossible. As the crew began working with the focused intensity that had characterized humanity's rise to galactic prominence, Cathara realized that the galaxy was about to witness another demonstration of humanity's greatest gift, the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. The Zentari had spent the last 10 years believing they were preserving their civilization by isolating themselves from change. They were about to discover that the greatest threat to their survival wasn't the alliance they had rejected. It was the stagnation they had chosen. The final test of the human way was about to begin,